The oncologist's words hit me like a physical blow. Stage 3 breast cancer. At 34, I hadn't expected this diagnosis. My mother held my hand tightly as Dr. Roberts explained the treatment plan. Aggressive chemotherapy, followed by surgery and radiation. I was grateful for Mom's presence, her quiet strength. I had no idea that within weeks, she would join the rest of my family in abandoning me when I needed them most. "We'll get through this together, Amy," Mom promised as we left the hospital that day. "I'll help you every step of the way." I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She'd always been my rock, especially after Dad died 5 years ago. Sure, we had our differences. She never approved of my career as an environmental lawyer, preferring I'd follow the family tradition of real estate development. But she'd always been there for major life events. The first round of chemo hit me hard. I spent hours in the bathroom, violently ill, barely able to stand. Mom stayed over that first night, but I could see her discomfort, the way she averted her eyes from my suffering. "Maybe we should hire a nurse," she suggested the next morning, gathering her things. "Someone professional who knows how to handle this." "I can't afford a private nurse," I reminded her. "The insurance only covers the treatments." Even with my lawyer's salary, the medical bills were already overwhelming. "Well," Mom hesitated. "I could help with that. But Amy, you know how I feel about your career choices. If you join the family business like your cousins." I cut her off, too exhausted for this familiar argument. "Mom, please. Not now." She left the afternoon, promising to return tomorrow. But tomorrow came and went without any sign of her. My calls went straight to voicemail. Finally, 3 days later, I received a text. "Amy, this is too stressful for me to handle. I've arranged for meals to be delivered. Take care of yourself. Love, Mom." Meals. As if prepared food could replace her presence, her promised support. My cousins were next. Kate and Jennifer, who I'd grown up with, who'd been more like sisters than cousins, stopped visiting after the second week. "It's just hard to see you like this," Kate explained awkwardly over the phone. "And with the kids, I'm worried about them getting upset." Jennifer didn't even bother with excuses. She simply stopped responding to my messages. Aunt Patricia, Mom's sister, and my godmother lasted a bit longer. She came by every few days for the first month, bringing soup and sympathy. But after I lost my hair, after the treatments left me gaunt and gray, she too began making excuses. "You understand, don't you, dear?" she said during what would be her final visit. "Your mother's having a really hard time with this. She needs support too." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw things. I wanted to ask who was supporting me, the one actually fighting for my life. But I didn't have the energy. The chemo took everything. The only family member who stood by me was Uncle Marcus, Dad's younger brother. He lived across the country in Seattle. But he called every day, sent care packages, and even flew in twice during my 6 months of treatment. "They're cowards," he said bluntly during one visit, helping me clean up after a particularly bad bout of nausea. "Your mother of the cousins, they can't handle anything that disrupts their perfect little world." "But why?" I asked, fighting back tears. "What did I do wrong?" "Nothing, kiddo." He stroked my bald head gently, just as he used to ruffle my hair when I was little. "You did nothing wrong. Some people just can't handle illness. It reminds them of their own mortality. Mom handled Dad's heart attack. That was different. It was quick, clean, over in a day. Cancer," he sighed. "Cancer forces people to show who they really are. And sometimes we don't like what we see." He was right. As the months of treatment dragged on, as I fought my way through the hell of chemotherapy largely alone, I learned exactly who my family really was. The carefully maintained facade of closeness, of unconditional support, crumbled in the face of actual adversity. My law firm was more understanding than my family. They kept my position open, arranged for me to work remotely when I felt able. And my colleagues set up a rotation to drive me to treatments. Even my opponents in court sent well wishes and care packages. Family isn't always blood. My friend and legal assistant Maria reminded me, sitting with me through a particularly rough chemo session. Sometimes it's the people who show up when everyone else walks away. She was holding my hair back as I vomited when Mom finally visited again, 3 months into my treatment. I heard her gasp from the bathroom doorway. "Amy? Oh my God." I looked up, wiping my mouth, too weak to even feel angry anymore. Mom stood there in her expensive suit, designer purse clutched to her chest like a shield, staring at me with horror. "What do you want?" Maria asked coldly, still rubbing my back. I brought some things. And I wanted to talk about the Riverside Development Project. Of course, the family business. The real estate development that was threatening to destroy one of the last wetland habitats in our area. The project I'd been fighting in court before my diagnosis. "Really?" Maria's voice could have frozen fire. "Your daughter is fighting for her life, and you're here about a development project." Mom straightened, her face hardening. "It's $100 million project. The family's future depends on it. If Amy would just drop her opposition." "Get out." I surprised myself with the strength in my voice. "Get out now." She left, leaving behind a bag of organic snacks I was too nauseous to eat and a folder of development plans I was too weak to read. That was the last time I saw her in person during my treatment. The next 4 months tested every ounce of strength I possessed. Some days I wasn't sure I would survive. But slowly, gradually, the treatments began to work. The tumor shrank. My blood counts improved. By the time I rang the remission bell in the oncology ward, surrounded by friends from work and Uncle Marcus, I was changed, not just physically, but deep inside. I returned to work part-time, rebuilding my strength and my practice. The Riverside development case was still pending, delayed by my illness. Mom sent a message through her lawyers. If I dropped the case, she would reconcile with me. I forwarded the message to my litigation team and filed an amended complaint the next day. Life settled into a new normal. Regular checkups replaced chemo sessions. My hair grew back, curly where it had once been straight. I learned to live with the fear of recurrence, the constant awareness of my mortality that cancer survivors carry. Then, exactly 1 year after my last treatment, I received the call that would change everything again. "Amy?" Uncle Marcus's voice was grave. "Your mother's had a stroke. It's serious." I sat down heavily at my desk, memories of the past year washing over me. "How serious?" "She's asking for you." "Well, technically, she's asking for her lawyer, but you should come." I arrived at the hospital an hour later. The family was there in force. Aunt Patricia, Kate, Jennifer, various cousins and their spouses. They looked at me like I was a ghost. "What is she doing here?" I heard Jennifer whisper to Kate. I ignored them, following Uncle Marcus to Mom's room. She lay there, small and pale, nothing like the strong, intimidating woman I remembered. Her right side was paralyzed, her speech slurred. "Amy," she managed. "Papers." "Need?" "Papers." A lawyer I didn't recognize stood by her bed, holding a document folder. "Mrs. Harrison has some matters she wants to resolve," he explained smoothly. "Family business issues." I looked at the papers he held out, a new will, a change in the family trust, and there, on top, a settlement offer for the Riverside development case. "Sign," Mom slurred. "Please." I took the papers, read them carefully. The settlement would have protected the developers, my family, while offering minimal environmental safeguards. The will and trust changes would have given me an equal share of her estate, restoring my inheritance. All I had to do was sign. I looked at my mother, remembering her text message during my darkest days. "This is too stressful for me to handle." "No," I said quietly, placing the papers back on her bed. "I don't think I will." Her face contorted. "Ungrateful. After everything." "Everything." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean like abandoning me during cancer treatment? Like trying to manipulate me now?" "Mrs. Harrison is quite ill," her lawyer interjected. "Perhaps this isn't the time." "You're right," I agreed. "It isn't. But don't worry, Mom. I kept records of everything. Every text, every voicemail, every letter. And the nurses at the cancer center, they keep video logs of who visits patients, or in your case, who doesn't." Mom's heart monitor began beeping faster. "I have to get back to work," I said, turning to leave. "I have a wetlands to protect. Oh, and Mom, take care of yourself." I walked out of her hospital room that day feeling lighter, freer. I had faced death and survived. I had lost my family and found my strength. Whatever came next, I was ready. What came next, as it turned out, was something none of us expected. 2 weeks after my hospital visit, Mom passed away in her sleep. And she had, in her final days, made one last set of changes to her will. Changes that would shake our family to its core. I looked at my mother, remembering her text message during my darkest days. This is too stressful for me to handle. No, I said quietly, placing the papers back on her bed. I don't think I will. Her face contorted. Ungrateful. After everything. Everything? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You mean like abandoning me during cancer treatment? Like trying to manipulate me now? Mrs. Harrison is quite ill, her lawyer interjected. Perhaps this isn't the time. You're right, I agreed. It isn't. But don't worry, Mom. I kept records of everything. Every text, every voicemail, every letter. And the nurses at the cancer center. They keep video logs of who visits patients. Or in your case, who doesn't. Mom's heart monitor began beeping faster. I have to get back to work, I said, turning to leave. I have a wetlands to protect. Oh, and Mom, take care of yourself. I walked out of her hospital room that day feeling lighter, freer. I had faced death and survived. I had lost my family and found my strength. Whatever came next, I was ready. What came next, as it turned out, was something none of us expected. 2 weeks after my hospital visit, Mom passed away in her sleep, and she had, in her final days, made one last set of changes to her will. Changes that would shake our family to its core. The remaining assets will be divided according to the schedule attached to my will, with one condition. Mom's face hardened. Anyone who wishes to contest these provisions must first watch the complete security footage from the cancer center. All 187 days of it. Watch what we did to Amy. Watch what our choices meant for her. Watch who really showed up and who ran away. The video ended. The lights came up. I looked around the conference room at my family's stricken faces. Mrs. Harrison's instructions are clear, Mr. Caldwell said into the silence. The new organizational documents for Harrison Development are prepared. Amy, as majority shareholder, you'll need to sign these. I took the papers he offered, reading them carefully. The restructuring was thorough, not just transferring control, but fundamentally changing how the company operated. Environmental impact assessments would be mandatory for all projects. The Riverside development would be redesigned to protect the wetlands. What about the foundation? I asked. Mr. Caldwell handed me another folder. Your mother worked with several cancer support organizations to structure it. The foundation will provide grants for home health care, transportation to treatments, and other support services. She was quite insistent about the details. I thought about all the other cancer patients I'd met during my treatment. How many of them had also faced their battles alone? How many families had crumbled under the pressure? I'll sign, I said quietly, but I have some conditions of my own. My family tensed visibly. First, the foundation's board will include actual cancer survivors. People who understand what patients really need. Mr. Caldwell nodded, making notes. Second, Harrison Development will donate land for a new cancer support center. The empty lot on Maple Street would be perfect. That's prime real estate. Aunt Patricia protested. I looked at her steadily. Yes, it is, right in the center of town, where patients can easily access it, where everyone can see it, where we can't ignore it. She subsided, looking away. And finally, I continued, I want to offer everyone here a choice. The room grew very quiet. You can fight this, hire lawyers, contest the will, spend years in court while the business suffers and the foundation waits. Or what? Kate asked softly. Or you can help me make it mean something. Help me turn our family's shame into something positive. Work with me to build support systems for other families facing cancer. Use our resources, our connections, our skills to make sure no one else goes through treatment alone. Uncle Marcus was the first to respond. I'm in, he said simply. Whatever you need. One by one, others began to nod. Even Jennifer, still wiping away tears, raised her hand tentatively. I'd like to help, she whispered. Maybe work with the families? Help them understand what not to do. I think that's a perfect role for you, I said gently. Over the next 2 hours, we outlined plans for both the business and the foundation. People who hadn't spoken to me in a year offered ideas, resources, support. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. As the meeting wound down, Kate approached me hesitantly. Amy, can we talk? We found a quiet corner of the office. Kate couldn't quite meet my eyes. My kids ask about you sometimes, she said. They don't understand why we stopped visiting. I don't understand it either, looking back. We were just scared. I know, I said. Fear makes us do terrible things sometimes. Can we try again? Maybe start with Sunday dinner. The kids would love to see you. I thought about Uncle Marcus's words from a year ago. Cancer forces people to show who they really are. But maybe it also gives us a chance to become better than we were. Sunday dinner sounds good, I said. But Kate? This time, when things get hard, and they will get hard again someday, don't run away. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I promise. 1 year later, I stood at the podium during the grand opening of the Harrison Cancer Support Center. The modern building gleamed in the sunlight, its walls of windows looking out over carefully preserved wetlands. A stream of people flowed through the doors. Cancer patients, survivors, families seeking help, volunteers offering support. My family was there too, scattered through the crowd. Kate running the registration desk, her kids helping hand out programs. Jennifer leading a support group for family members, teaching them how to face their fears and show up for their loved ones. Aunt Patricia organizing transportation services for patients. Uncle Marcus overseeing it all with quiet pride. The foundation had already helped hundreds of families navigate the cancer journey together. Harrison Development was becoming known for environmentally conscious projects that enhanced communities. And slowly, gradually, my own family was healing, not returning to what we were before, but growing into something new, something better. Thank you all for coming, I began my speech. A year ago, my mother left us not just a business and a foundation, but a challenge. A challenge to face our fears, admit our failures, and work to make sure other families don't make the same mistakes we did. I touched my hair, now grown out into soft waves. Cancer showed us who we really were. But it also showed us who we could become. This center is not just about supporting cancer patients, though that's vital. It's about supporting families, teaching them how to stay together when everything is falling apart, showing them that love means showing up, especially when it's hard. From the back of the room, I saw Uncle Marcus give me a thumbs up. Beside him, an empty chair sat draped with Mom's favorite scarf, a reminder of the lesson she learned too late, but made sure we'd never forget. Together, I concluded, we can turn our greatest failures into our finest moments. We can transform fear into courage, absence into presence, regret into purpose. That's what this center represents. That's what our family now stands for. And that's a legacy worth building. The applause was thunderous, but what moved me most were the tears I saw on my family members' faces. Not tears of shame anymore, but of determination, of hope, of promise. Later that evening, as I walked through the quiet building after everyone had left, I paused by the wall of donor names. There, under the largest plaque, were my mother's final words from her video, cast in bronze. Love is not just a feeling. It's a choice we make every day, especially on the hardest days. Choose wisely. I touched the plaque gently, remembering both the pain and the healing of the past 2 years. Sometimes the greatest gifts come from our deepest wounds. Sometimes our worst moments lead us to our best selves. And sometimes, just sometimes, even the most broken families can find their way back to love.